There's a moment, and you'll know it if it's happened to you, when someone looks at you with that particular expression, not unkind, just sorry for you. And they say, real gentle, like they're delivering news. You must get so lonely. My name is Annie Mae Carter. I'm 81 years old, and I have been living alone in this house for going on 7 years now. 7 years since the last of my children moved their last concern for me across town and left me here with the silence and the kitchen and a dog-eared calendar nobody else writes on anymore. Everyone assumed I was waiting to not be alone, waiting for one of them to come back or for me to finally break down and go somewhere smaller, somewhere supervised, somewhere I'd be around people. I let them think that for a while because the real truth took me some time to find. And once I found it, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. I want to go back to the first month. I remember standing in the kitchen one morning, still dark out, January, the radiator ticking, and I had this thought that stopped me cold. I didn't know what I wanted for breakfast, not because there was nothing in the house, but because for so many years I'd cooked what Earl liked, then what the children needed. Then what was practical, what was quick, what made sense for everyone at the table. I hadn't asked myself that question. What do I want? In so long that I'd forgotten I was allowed to. I stood there with my hand on the refrigerator door for a good minute. Then I closed it. Put the kettle on. Sat down at the table and just sat. Didn't make a thing. Had coffee and watched the light come up slowly through the kitchen window the way it does in January, apologetic and pale. Nobody was waiting on me. Nothing was burning. Nobody needed anything. That morning felt strange and a little frightening. But beneath the strangeness, beneath all the quiet I hadn't asked for, something was beginning to shift. I just didn't know it yet. The first thing everyone tells you when you start living alone is to stay busy, fill the calendar, join the senior center, take a class, get a hobby. Stay connected. Don't let yourself sit in the silence too long. I tried all of it. I signed up for a chair yoga class on Tuesday mornings. I didn't like chair yoga. The instructor had a voice that made me feel like I was being narrated. I went for 6 weeks because I'd committed, because that's what you do. And then I stopped going and felt relieved every Tuesday after that. I joined a Bible study group at the church on Maple. Good women, all of them. But the conversation never went anywhere that interested me. We talked around things. We talked at things. The coffee was weak and the chairs were hard, and I sat there for 2 months smiling and contributing nothing real. I called people more than I wanted to. Called my daughter Linda just to have something to do with my hands. Called Gloria, that's my sister, at odd hours, not because I missed her, but because I was trying to prove to myself I wasn't somebody who sat alone in a house getting strange. And still, every evening, there I was, alone. And the advice, stay busy, stay connected. It wasn't wrong exactly. It just wasn't telling the truth either, because keeping busy wasn't solving the problem. It was just delaying the moment I'd have to sit with it. About 3 months in, I tried a different approach. I decided the problem was the house. Too big, too quiet, too full of Earl's absence in every room. So I started rearranging. Moved the couch, moved the chairs. Cleared out the hall closet of 40 years of accumulated things. Coats he'd never worn again. Shoes that still held the shape of his feet, which I could not look at. So I bagged them quickly and put them by the door for the church pickup. I painted the spare room beige. Safe, inoffensive beige, because I thought, a fresh space, a clean space, and I will feel better in it. The beige room didn't help. I still walked past it and felt the same low hum of something missing. I called Linda one evening and told her I'd been rearranging, and she said, "Mama, maybe you should think about coming to stay with us for a while." And I knew she meant well. I knew it was love talking. But something in me tightened up like a jar lid, and I said, "I'm fine." And I got off the phone and sat down on the rearranged couch in the rearranged living room and thought, I am not fine, and rearranging furniture has nothing to do with why. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I also in those early months bought a very large puzzle. one of those 1,000-piece ones with a photograph of a covered bridge in Vermont that I have never been to and have no particular feeling about. It sat on the card table in the corner for 2 weeks. I finished the border and about 60 pieces of sky, and then one afternoon I swept the whole thing back into the box, bridge and all, and put it in the closet, and felt nothing but the reasonable satisfaction of reclaiming the card table. Some solutions just don't fit the actual problem. By spring I was tired of trying things, tired of filling time. Tired of performing okay for anyone who happened to check in. Tired of answering "How are you holding up?" with something that sounded like progress. One afternoon in April, warm for the first time that year, one of those days where the light comes through different, softer, I was sitting on the back porch and I stopped, just stopped. Stopped trying to figure out what to do next. Stopped planning. Stopped managing myself like a project. I sat there and I listened to the yard. Mockingbird somewhere in the oak tree, going through his whole repertoire, neighbors' wind chimes, a car passing slow on the street out front, the particular late afternoon quiet that I'd been drowning out for months. I sat there for a long time, longer than I'd sat still since Earl passed, and something happened that I'm still not entirely sure how to explain. The quiet stopped feeling like a wound. It started feeling like a room I'd never been inside before. A room that had always been there, somewhere behind the busyness and the noise and the performance of keeping everything together, and I had never once gone in. I am not a woman who comes to things quickly, but that spring I started coming to things. I started learning slowly what I actually liked, not what was practical, not what fit the schedule, not what made sense for everyone. What I liked personally as a person, in my own body and my own mind. I like mornings. Always have, but I never noticed because mornings used to belong to everyone else. Now they're mine. I wake early, sometimes 4:30, 5. When the house is still dark and the neighborhood is quiet, and I make my coffee and I take it to the porch and I don't talk to anyone and I don't need to. I like silence more than I ever admitted. I spent years keeping the television on as company, background noise, the house sounding inhabited. But one morning the set flickered off. Old thing, I've had it since the 90s, and I sat in the sudden quiet and thought, I don't actually miss it. I leave it off most mornings now. Only turn it on when I want to, not out of habit, not out of fear. I like cooking for myself in a way I never cooked when I was cooking for a family. Last fall, I made a pot of vegetable soup at 2 in the afternoon because I wanted soup, and that was when I wanted to make it. Nobody said it's too early for supper, Annie. Nobody needed something different. I sat at my own table at 3:15 in the afternoon with a bowl of soup, and it was one of the better meals I can remember eating. Small thing. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it wasn't small. The other thing that happened, and this surprised me most, is that the people I did see, I saw differently. Denise down the street. She comes by sometimes, not on a schedule, just when she's between things. She'll stand at the door and we'll talk for 10, 15 minutes. And then she's back to her day. No obligation, no performance. She doesn't treat me like something that needs monitoring. And I don't treat her visits like something I need to deserve. Her daughter Kayla walked with me to the mailbox one afternoon last month. Didn't say much. Walked alongside me the way children do when they're comfortable. No pressure to fill the quiet. When we got back to the house, she said, "Bye, Miss Annie," and went back up the street, and I stood at my door for a moment afterward, feeling something warm and uncomplicated, not filled, not fixed, just touched, briefly, lightly, in the good way. That's what living alone teaches you if you let it. It teaches you the difference between contact that depletes you and contact that sustains you. When you're not desperate for company, you stop accepting whatever comes and start noticing what's actually good. I talk to Gloria on Sundays. Really talk. Not out of obligation, not to fill silence. I tell her what I've been thinking about all week, and she tells me about her week, and there's an ease to it that wasn't there before. Before, I'd call her half frightened, half lonesome, and she could hear it, and it changed things between us. Now I call her because I want to. That's a different thing entirely. Somewhere in the second year, I started letting myself take up space in ways I'd never permitted. I painted the spare room, not beige this time. I'd seen a color in a magazine at the doctor's office, a kind of deep, warm green, the color of old library books or sunlight through summer leaves, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went to the hardware store, and I stood there at the paint samples for a long time, and then I bought 3 quarts of that green, and I went home and painted the room myself over a weekend. My knees were unhappy about it. My back held a grudge for the better part of a week, but that room, I go in there now just to be in it, just to sit in that color. I put a chair by the window and a small table and a lamp and a stack of books I'd been meaning to read for years. In the evenings I go in and I read until I get tired, and it is one of the purest pleasures of my current life. Nobody gave me permission for that room. Nobody told me it was a good idea. Nobody's opinion was consulted. I made it for myself. That sounds like nothing until you've spent 60 years making things for other people, and then you understand exactly how much it means. Here is the thing nobody said to me in all those early months when everyone was worried and checking in and suggesting I fill my calendar. Nobody told me that being truly alone for the first time in your adult life might be the thing that finally shows you who you actually are. Not who you were to your husband, not who you were to your children, not who you were at work or in the neighborhood or in the pew third from the front on Sunday mornings. You, the actual person, the one who never had enough quiet to get a good look at herself. I found out that I am a woman who likes to sit on her own porch at 5 in the morning with no company but birds and coffee. I found out I am a woman who has opinions about paint colors. I found out I think more clearly when I walk than when I sit still, and that I'd been sitting still for 60 years and calling it patience. I found out I am not afraid of silence anymore, not afraid of my own thoughts in it, not afraid of what surfaces when the noise finally stops. That is not a small thing to learn at 81. That is not a small thing to learn at any age. I want to tell you something else. I used to worry that living alone meant I was no longer useful. That's the fear underneath all the other fears, isn't it? Not just loneliness, but irrelevance. The sense that if no one needs you, you've somehow stopped counting. What I found was different. What I found was that usefulness had been a costume I'd worn for so long I forgot it was a costume. And when I took it off, when nobody needed dinner at 6 and nobody needed the checkbook balanced and nobody needed me to hold it all together, what was underneath was just a person. A person who liked mornings and green rooms and vegetable soup in the afternoon and mockingbirds in the oak tree and her sister's voice on Sundays. A person who had been in there the whole time, waiting in the quiets. 7 years. 7 years of mornings that belong entirely to me. 7 years of the house arranged the way I want it. 7 years of my own rhythms. When I sleep, when I eat, when I sit still, when I move. 7 years of slowly, awkwardly, sometimes reluctantly coming to know the person I am when no one is asking anything of me. I am grateful for it in a way I couldn't have predicted. Not because it's been easy, not because the silence hasn't been heavy sometimes, or because there haven't been evenings where the house felt too large and too still and too much, but because it was mine, all of it, mine. And somewhere in the accumulation of all those ordinary days, all those early mornings and green rooms and afternoon soups and walks alone in the fall, somewhere in all that, I found a kind of peace I'd been looking for most of my life. Not the peace of having everything figured out, just the peace of not performing anymore. The peace of being quietly exactly who I am. Thank you for sitting here with me today. If you want to come back and sit again, I'll be here. Still learning, still finding out things about myself I probably should have noticed earlier. If this felt like something, if some part of it was for you, I'd be glad to have you stay close. You can subscribe and I'll be here again soon. Take care of yourself, whatever that means to you.